Hi, everybody. Welcome to Zeal Zaddy. I'm Scott. My pronouns are he, him, and this is Story Talk, where every picture tells a story. Tonight, we're going to talk about what a cozy game is. You'll likely hear the word aesthetic quite a bit tonight. Beauty in a game can matter. It might matter more in cozy games than in other places, but I don't mean surface beauty. I mean beauty in things deeper. But cozy games often rely as much on mystery and interpersonal exploration as they do stretching the aesthetic boundaries. They find beauty in the mundane, wonder in simplicity, look for power to heal and communicate, and awaken the innermost parts of us that things like education, family, responsibility have forced out of us. But as we all have memory that can re-energize us, and in some ways that's a point of the cozy game ecosystem, is reigniting energy in ourselves through lost or forgotten moments from childhood or imagined from unleashing our child's third eye. We have some special cozy creators tonight. I'm really excited to have them. If you have questions tonight, just drop them in chat. Use question in front of it to make it very easy to find. And let's get started. Let's bring everybody on because I'm way more excited about talking to them than talking to myself. All right, we have everybody on here. So I'm going to let everybody go around and say who they are. I'll drop links in so that you can follow them or find them. Let's go from the top left and go clockwise. So we'll start with you, Carrie, and let you kick us off.
Okay. So I'm Carrie Linden. I'm the communications manager over at Snowbright Studios. We do games like Teatime Adventures, Inc. We've got Harvest Hoppers. We have our magazine, Cozy Companion, and then we have Tea Pets coming to Backer Kit in September.
Nice. Jay?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jay. I am the editorial director at Possum Games, and I am the creator behind Sleepaway, Wanderhome, and the upcoming Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. Nice to meet you.
All right, Rich.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'm the director of Hatchling's Games, he, him pronouns. We make family-friendly RPGs, best known for Inspirisles, which is the first to teach British and American Sign Language.
Nice. All right, Squidsy.
I'm Squidsy. Pronouns are she, her. I am the partnering director for Lost Guide Games. We've got, I know y'all have probably seen Neon Shadows get spread around. That's us. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to be a part of this.
All right, and Grimm.
Hi, my name is Grimm. I am also one of the individuals at Lost Guide Games. I am one of the lead designers and mechanics guys.
All right, so if you have questions, like I said, just drop them in chat. You can put the word question in front so that it's easy for me to find, but I have a zillion questions already, so why don't I just get started and we'll see what comes of it. So I'm going to start with the easiest or the hardest question there is. What to you makes a cozy game? And anybody can start, whoever wants.
I think you're probably going to get a pile of different answers.
Awesome.
I think cozy is something a little different to everybody. Like I've played our game Inc. before, and it was a super cozy game, but I know that Inc. is not necessarily a cozy game for other players. For me, cozy games usually have a focus that is non-violent in nature, so it's some place where the combat has been removed. It doesn't mean that conflict is gone, but the conflict takes sort of a different form. So physically there's some sort of safety, but emotionally there's still, risk and exploration around. So yeah, that's kind of the start for me, is what's cozy.
Okay. Anyone to add?
I think broadly, my answer is a little like I don't know, almost pessimistic, but I think coziness is at its core a marketing understanding, right? Like all genres, or at least like all, I don't know, like kind of collections of objects, the blurry edges of what counts as a cozy game fundamentally comes down to audience reception and how the creator is in communication with creators around them, right? But a cozy game, ultimately it is a lot like horror, or tragedy or comedy, where there are some things which are, I think, very unmistakably of its type, right? Like we can look at a game and be like, this is unmistakably cozy. It has all of these traits. And then we can look at another game and be like, I would not articulate it that way. And then we can look at something else that like ultimately it comes down, like it exists at this edge. So I think there's no one universal definition, but rather a collection of traits which are about the experience the game elicits in you, or the reaction the audience has to it, which again is also contextual. Some audiences will react, in a very, like in a way where it's like, oh my god, I feel so comforted by engaging with this. Some people will look at it and feel really, have a very different emotional reaction. And so, like it's like horror that way, I think, which we were talking about even before the stream. It elicits an emotional reaction that is generally about comfort and peace and nostalgia.
Nice. Anything to add to that?
I think a lot of my design philosophy comes through playtesting with the kids as well, and the experience that comes from that and their reaction to it, like Jay was saying, in terms of the feedback from the systems and the kind of the emotions it elicits within the kids playing it. I also run like groups for teenagers and get similar vibes from certain systems and certain published material.
When you say that, do you think that there's a difference between cozy for a teenager and cozy for a kid?
Not really. I think in terms of content, in terms of like tone and mature content, then you're possibly. I mean, I know some of the games range from like for very young children to young adults. So in terms of content, it would change, but in terms of their reaction and the inventiveness of their role playing, then no, that they can have similar kind of vibes.
Nice, cool.
And to kind of build off of what Jay was saying, I'm gonna kind of go down pessimistic, but in a different way. Cozy doesn't always mean happy. I think that's a really important thing. Is you can feel tears and you can feel sadness and you can feel emotions that people normally like coin as negative in cozy games, and I think that that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of times actually cozy games or cozy settings can allow you a little more safety to explore some of those harder emotional kind of experiences.
I was actually going to be building right into that also, Carrie, with the idea is, to me, cozy has to do with the level of comfort in which the players are willing to be open with each other and vulnerable with each other is a key part of what cozy means to me. Part of that is also just trusting your party, your table, of course, is part of that, but some games kind of, through character creation and setting, and Jay's a great example of this with Wanderhome. It's this very cute setting with these anthropomorphic animals, and there is a lot of ways to be very, very vulnerable in that game without realizing you're setting yourself up for that.
Nice.
I think that there's this interesting thing in life when we talk about coziness, where I think we understand the sensation of cozy to be this kind of buffer from harm. Right? Like when we talk about what does it mean to be cozy, there's a pillow between yourself and an uncomfortable thing, right? That is kind of the textural sensation of what's being described. And I think that games that speak to people as cozy, I think, contain kind of a similar element where it's like, this is a game which creates some kind of buffer state between the raw and cruel realities of day-to-day life and the mundane evil of day-to-day life, and the kind of it builds a space to explore things kind of almost like a little like padded in a way, which I think that like part of the appeal of a pillow is you can scream into it, right? Like part of what's nice about a comfortable bed is that you can slam your fists into it as hard as you can and don't hurt yourself. And so I think that's the way in which like coziness does not mean an avoidance of emotion. It means kind of an intentional padding, which is like both a thing that keeps you safe, but is also a thing you've chosen to place down. Because you don't have to have padding, but it gives you, like you can just punch the drywall, or you can punch a pillow.
Don't
right?
recommend it.
That's
Pillows are probably a better thing to punch.
Yeah, it's the emotional, right? It gives you that emotional kind of the ability to kind of have an intentional space where you can create this padding on purpose as something separate from your day-to-day life.
So to that, oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
I was gonna say, just building on that, it's some of the hardest conversations, but the best conversations and the deepest conversations are with a blanket and a cup of hot chocolate.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So to that end, since we're talking about TTRPGs, which are games, what is a good cozy mechanic, either one you've created or one you've seen and you really adore and think is a really wonderful mechanic within a cozy TTRPG?
Well, in Inspirisles, you have a thing called a sanctuary, which is basically when you go to the alternate British Isles, you kind of you go into this kind of like a questing camp, which is kind of your hub area, and you get to almost like recreate a space from the real world, which made you feel really comfortable, or you had really positive experiences within. So we like examples like the swim bath changing room, or like your grandfather's workshop, or anything like that. It's basically transported to this alternate kind of dimension. I think that's quite cozy because it gets that perspective of role playing across, where it's kind of drawing on your characters' experiences beforehand.
Cool. Anyone else have a mechanic that they can think of?
I think maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. You go for it. You go.
Okay. One of my favorite mechanics. We've written 2 games based on this SRD. It's called Guided by the Sun. A fantastic SRD, and it's completely different than what I'm used to seeing. You build and play one character, so it's you and the group building and playing one character that you will all control in different ways. And I think that's a really cool way to do cozy group dynamics. It's interesting to see everybody take this character where they want to take it in their own vulnerable kind of way. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool mechanic for a cozy game.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think one thing that I've played with a lot that I've been very interested in is a lot of tabletop games assume high levels of engagement on behalf of the players, especially indie games. Like Dungeons and Dragons sometimes criticized for this, but I think a lot of indie games could oftentimes be worse about this, right? Where it's like, oh, you want to play my game? Well, first you're going to have to read 100 pages of rules and build 3-page character sheet and like figure out how to fly a plane in real life and all that stuff, which I sometimes love. I think that there is
that sounds good.
Games. Some of my friends make incredible games that are in that style. I don't mean to dunk on them there, but I think that a way in which I try to kind of make my games feel like I think make it feel like you can kind of come to this at whatever energy level you're at, and like it's okay to kind of be wherever you need to be, is with a really hard focus on like, this is not a game that rewards high engagement. So in Wanderhome, many of the examples of play focus on someone who is like selectively nonverbal or like fatigued in such a way that they cannot kind of like engage with play regularly, but like doing drawings or like occasionally chiming in. And then Yazeba's Ben Breakfast has like multiple like characters you can play as if you just want to be nonverbal and like sit around that day, and also has like spots on the character sheet where it's like, if you're bored and you want to just doodle something, here's a blank canvas, right? Like this kind of like, if you focus better by just like drawing little hearts in the corner of this character sheet or like thinking about recipes, you can just do that instead of like paying attention to whatever's going on. And so being like, to me, like a lot of coziness is about space building, and so for me a lot of that comes down to like, I want to make games that make it clear that you can kind of like, the game will meet you where you are, not expect you to come to it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. So one of the cozy games have been growing quite a bit. And one thing that happens in most industries is companies learn from each other. Do you see non-cozy games learning from what you're producing and picking up either some of the ideals that you're trying to promote in your games, or the mechanics, or even the look and feel, even though they're not creating a cozy game? Like, is what you're doing being drawn into these other systems that you've noticed?
Yeah, I think anytime something does well or it strikes a chord with a player base, you're going to see that ripple out, regardless of the genre. We'll get asked about certain games. We'll be like, our games were in development at the exact same time as this one. There's like an automatic assumption that if there's any similarities between something, it's because you are playing off of something that is also built. So yeah, I think you see you see certain things that go in cycles, be it art styles or even ad styles can be really predictable based on, if a campaign is done really well and their marketing is done really well, or I don't think, yeah, you'll see like anthropomorphic characters have kind of, they're still doing really well, and there's several games that have used them. So I think there's kind of a general tendency to run with things that do well or that strike a chord. And yeah, you see that in games that also aren't, considered cozy. And then sometimes too, it's just realizing that there's a need. Like when we were working on Teatime Adventures, it was like, oh, you're making a game for kids. It's like, no, we're not making a game for kids. Like there's plenty of people out there that want a TTRPG that doesn't have combat. They want to see queer representation. They want to see disabled individuals within the game. We are creating a game for us because we don't see that out there. And then it does well, and then other people are like, oh, well, maybe there's actually an audience for this. So then other, studios start picking that up. And honestly, it's great. Like we just got back from Gen Con, and the amount of people that stopped by and were like, it's so nice to see so much more queer content in the tabletop industry this year. That's fantastic. Like that's what we want to see. We want to see these things that we know are important, not be trivialized, like, oh, it's a kid's game, but to see that the community as a whole is finding value in, some of the aspects of the games that we make. And now that's starting to, push out into other studios.
I also think that cozy games are a subset of a larger cultural push, right? Like we're not like uniquely really interested in this kind of like particular framework of aesthetics and experiences. Like Wanderhome got big in part because a bunch of TikTok teenagers really are into mushrooms, right? Like I own that, right? And like it really resonates, right? Like when I met my boyfriend, like on our first date, like 6 hours in, I was like, oh, you're right. You're right. I was like Wanderhome. And he's like, oh, I saw TikTok about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you did, dude. It's not, and that's not because Wanderhome like is some unique special sauce. It's because like there is a general cultural interest in, I think, like we are living in a very unstable, scary, and cruel time, right? We're living in a time when like we are like the United States is teetering on the precipice of fascism at all times. And I think that when you are in that position, there's a strong desire to return, and that is not necessarily like a fully progressive desire, right? Like coziness alongside all other forms of narrative experience are like politically neutral, right? Like, or not politically neutral, politically broad in that it's a wide camp for many different ideological frameworks, but it is popular among a lot of different people who want to return to childhood, want to return to simplicity, who are frightened by the complexity of the world and want something comforting. And I think that, like Wanderhome is big in RPGs, but like Stardew Valley did it first a decade earlier, right? Like Wanderhome and Stardew Valley are different games, but like many of these games that are popular right now are playing into that. And so I don't think I can look at another game studio and be like, oh, you got that from Wanderhome, because it's like we're all in the zeitgeist, we're all drinking the same Kool-Aid, we're all experiencing culture at the same time.
Yeah, it's identifying a need. I think, kind of touching on that. There's a cultural need, and games are being built to meet that.
Yeah, people make games for things they want to experience, and my God, do I want to experience being like a talking animal eating?
Exactly, yeah.
It's eating soup on the trail, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
But it's also a lot to do with your influences as a designer as well. You know, me, Studio Ghibli. I went through college years watching all those films, and and then recently, like animated series like Hilda and Gravity Falls and all these things. They're a big influence, and they're all quite cozy experiences.
Maisie always makes fun of me because I don't watch TV that often, so you can always tell when I've started a new TV show because I write a game based on it.
Exactly.
Like, have diverse experiences. I just watch a thing and write a game, watch a thing and write a game.
Speaking of that, are there media sources that you are inspired by outside of Studio Ghibli? What about movies, books, TV shows, things like that that all of you do find inspiration for your games from or in?
I think for Snowbright, it's kind of everywhere. Grace does a lot of our writing, and they pull things in from movies. There's inspiration from games they've played. Our artist Quill, there's so much. It's art. It's art that we saw when we were kids. It's book covers from a book that you've had in your collection since you were 7. It can come from anywhere. Somebody posts a cute picture of a mushroom, and it's like, oh, or you find somebody's sketch of a frog in a jumpsuit, and you're like, okay, like there's something there.
Yeah.
And then it just gets sort of bounced around, and it becomes a thing, and your team resonates with it, and it starts to take on its own shape and become something that belongs to the studio or the game designer. But yeah, that inspiration, I think it's broad. It's everywhere.
Something else to keep in mind is just media itself is just so widespread, and dissemination can be as simple as one still from one show turns into this huge meme that goes viral one time, and boom, hey, this thing taken out of context and given new meaning is now inspiring new work.
And sometimes it's also what's not there.
Right.
If
filling
you notice,
the void.
Yeah, it's like something is missing, and you feel that thing that's missing, and then you start to identify what that missing thing is, and it's like, okay, that missing thing needs to exist.
Yeah, you'll watch something and you'll be like, my God, they could have gone so much harder. They could have been explicit.
Right.
Yeah.
What's going on in this other part that we can't see? Like one of a major inspiration for me for Wanderhome was Moomin Valley and Moomin Troll, which is Tove Jansson's like cartoon series from Finland that's very big. But one of the big things about it is that it is about living in this like sweet little valley where things are pretty all right, but it's pretty clear that the world outside Moomin Valley kind of sucks. Like both in terms of like on a big cosmic level where there's like a guy called the Hobgoblin King who rides a Black Panther and who like is a powerful sorcerer constantly engaged in wizard battles, and it's like, hey, like what's going on, right? Like what's his but also in the sense of like at one point there's a young girl who arrives to Moomin Valley who is turned invisible because she's been abused, and she was abused so tremendously she turned herself invisible. And so it's like, okay, there's a lot, like this is not a like there's a lot there for me where I was like, oh, this is not a story about this is not a story about a world that's just fundamentally happy. This is a story that is about a part of the world that has been made happy through the care and passion of the people who live there. And like, so I think that finding those kinds of like engaging with media on the surface level reveals one set of things, seeing what's missing reveals the second set of things, and then seeing what is purposely eluded is also another set of like it's kind of together into like the I don't know, like in art history we talk a lot about like the various gazes and the various like the way where like a painting is made for multiple groups of people to see it in completely different ways at the same time. Like a painting can appear to be heterosexual, but for a second group of people it's gay. And I think that inspiration kind of strikes in a similar fashion.
We did get a question from chat, and it's a good question. What are the most interesting questions you get from new players about your games?
What do I do if there's no violence? Like, what's the point?
Right.
Like,
Oh
what am
my
I
God.
doing if I'm not killing people? What's happening?
Yeah, we get that one a lot too, where people will flip through like the stats for your character and be like, "Well, why? Well, these skills aren't in." I'm like, "Yeah, they're not in your regular system because this is our system,
Not that
and
system, right.
our systems. Yeah, you have flora friendship, and it's a different set of skills because this is a different game. So we also get that. What do you do if you're not? You do if you're not fighting."
So interesting because I don't know about you, but I think maybe I've like genuinely fought like once or twice in my life, or you know what I mean? Like I've like been in physical violence. Like
Yeah.
Can't relate.
most of the story. All right, well, professional wrestler over here has a different thing. I think for most of us, like stories are something that like I don't know, like most stories that I tell about my life do not involve rolling for initiative.
Yeah, I think one thing that's been really fun to watch with people playing like Teatime Adventures is you get like that hesitancy, or you'll see a group come into a live play and they traditionally play very combat heavy games, and you'll get that banter that starts at the beginning of, oh well, we'll see if I can smash somebody in the face with a carrot, like that, haha, I'm gonna make this like combat driven. And then they meet Daffodil, like the village golden retriever, and all of a sudden the next 2 hours is just about this dog and taking the dog around the village and trying to keep the dog from eating Efferson sausage. And they start to like, they don't realize they're getting it, but that they're having this game experience that has nothing to do with combat, but they're still having a really good time. They're still doing things. Yeah, it's weird that there's so much, people find so much, I don't even know if it's comfort or if it's just we've built so much combat into so many TTRPGs that is how people know how to play.
So it's familiarity, because I think that's the big thing when it comes to people with comfort. Because as someone who did fight semi-professionally and everything else, though it's not actually a lot of fun. It's not actually fun to be in a fight. I don't want to make games where the goal is to fight, because fighting sucks a lot. But with that being said, especially with the history of the hobby and where it comes from, violence is so baked into it, and because our hobby begat the video games hobby in its modern form, and the saturation of violence within the video games hobby as well, the idea of progression in fantasy is combat.
Yeah.
And breaking that is hard.
The way I also often talk about it is that violence in games is very rarely violence. It's not actually a desire for genuine, real violence, which is, as Grimm was saying, is brutal and fast and horrific and upsetting.
Not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's not it's this other thing that we call violence that is actually like self-articulation and assertion of agency, and like development of willpower and like demanding space that we bundle up into violence. So when someone asks me like, well, there's no violence, what do I do? Really what they're asking is, how do I assert myself, and how do I tell my story, and how do I carve out my niche of the world when I lack the only tool that I've understood how to do that narratively? And it's like, well, great news. That's why it's a game and not just
Hey, great news. What you're wanting for isn't actually what you think you're wanting. You're not wanting violence, like you were saying, Jade. What you're wanting is, and what it really boils down to, especially in a lot of your mainstream TTRPGs, it's control. At the end of the day, it all boils down to control.
How do it becomes, how do I assert myself with the GM?
Correct.
The GM is, if the GM gets to control the whole world, how do I get to carve out my chunk of it?
Correct.
Well, and I think cozy games can be intimidating to some people too, because we tend to present them with games that require you to talk and feel your way through uncomfortable situations. And that is something that a lot of people choose to avoid.
Well, it is much harder to engage with, especially negative emotions, than for me, for example, putting 2 hours into my heavy bag downstairs. One's very easy, one's very hard. You know, and it's especially with a lot of people who come from the more traditional side of the hobby over to the indie side, especially to the cozy side. You know, it is such a dynamic shift, not just in goal, but in motifs, in aesthetics. They're trying to find something to latch on to kind of center themselves back in the hobby, and without them having a lot of those things that they're used to having. You know, the premise of the majority of traditional tabletop games turns into kick down the door, kill the goblins, take their stuff.
Squidsy, what are your thoughts? Just because I know you seem like you have some.
I was actually gonna chime in kind of the way Grimm did, and that it is so much easier to hit something than it is to talk and converse our way through it. We live in a society that teaches us to push those things down and just either deal with it or you don't. I mean, those are your two options, as long as you don't actually feel it and converse your way through it.
Yep.
And I do, kind of going off what Carrie said, that's scary. And so people do want, well, I know how to carve my space by using a sword. I don't know how to carve my space by using actual words and meaningful conversation. And yeah, that's terrifying.
Well, to that end, do you see your game, I mean, this is a question that could go to everybody, do you see your game then as a tool for individuals to manage their mental health?
So for Snowbright, we have a really strong background in education. Several of us are teachers. We've worked in education policy. So I think if you come at our games knowing our background and our history, you can definitely see that runs through every product that we make. It's not explicit, but it's there. So if you're playing through the adventures and in Teatime Adventures, for example, you know, they're going to build an emotional complexity. They're going to touch on things like handling rejection and grief and regret. Like, there are these things that are really uncomfortable that we tend to like to avoid, but we've created adventures that specifically touch upon them. And if you've got a good GM that can help you then also pull through and navigate that with your group. So yeah, for us, there was intentionality behind that, both in Teatime Adventures and in Ink. Ink is a game about grief, you know, at its core, and loss. And you can choose to lean into that and, you know, experience that sort of process, or you can just turn it into a dungeon crawler. I mean, it's both, but we came in it with the intention that you can take something and grow through playing these games.
Over at Lost Sky Games, we're very much the same way. We actually, only instead of education, ours is the mental health profession. Squidsy is... I'll Squidsy talk about Squidsy.
You're good. I am a mental health professional in my day job, and Grimm and I are both therapeutic game masters. We're both certified therapeutic game masters who have been trained to use tabletop games as a way to help manage mental health. Neon Shadows uses the 9 Enneagram types in character building, and the way you develop your character is either you go into one type or the other type, just like kind of the 9 Enneagrams do when they use that in personality exams. Way back when, I don't think we use it anymore. But, so yeah, ours is mental health based, and you can see it in all of our games as well.
So I think one thing to keep in mind, especially for, and this is me nitpicking words, Scott, on this one. I would not use the word managing mental health for this. You know, we do not make games to manage mental health. Oh. That is an entirely separate thing. That is going to a professional. That is doing whatever it is.
Research.
I didn't know a better word, and I was
no.
Counselor, so I was like, well,
again,
they'll fix it for me.
right. No, we make games that allow you to engage with your mental health. You know, they are there to help you process certain things if you want to engage on a level. My goal as a designer has always and will always be the deeper you engage with my games, the more you will get out of it. If you want to approach it I'm actually working on a solo duology, a solo two-player game right now that is playing with the motifs of the traditional heroes party versus the Demon Lord's castle. And just a little, for anyone who's interested, that's a little sneak peek on that for everybody. But there are a lot of aspects of that game where it's kind of looking at and confronting, if you want to do it at that level, the reason why the hero is in the place that they are. Who put them on this place? Why are they there? Are they there because it is actually the right thing, or are they there because it's the people who are in charge told them it was the right thing? The level in which you engage with the game will let you that. If you just want to do it as, I'm going to play this as a dungeon run, go ahead, do so. It's designed to be able to run that way. If you want to use it as, I want to take a look and see at why I, as the player, am making and engaging with decisions based on other things that others have told me, that is there also as an option for you to engage with.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, everyone here, I think one thing that all of our work has in common is an interest in, we all have, to some degree or another, backgrounds in working with either kids or, working in mental health or, working in, various fields. I think that, beyond the fact that I think that's just, a very common thing for tabletop RPG designers to do in their day jobs, right? Turns out the people who spend, a lot of their day job very invested in systems and pedagogy, want to apply those things in their hobbies as well. But I do also think, I think Grimm and Squidsy, you put it well, I don't think that my games are therapy. My games can be used by licensed therapists, right? It has been, and they've been used that way well. My games are not I'm not designing with that in mind, because ultimately I don't have that control. As a game designer, you don't have the ability to. The best I can have to do is provide people with the tool, and I lack the formal training or the consultations to create, or the interest to create such a tool. I'm ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm making games, and I think that games have an incredible capacity to be used outside of just play, right? Games can be incredibly cathartic. They can be, pedagogical. They can be revelatory. They can be transformational. But I think that that's not what I am designing my games for. It's just I want my games to be fun games, and then I trust that the people who have the technical knowledge to apply those things will loop in the things they need to do. Which is also, that's not I think it's really cool when game designers actually, Rich, I'm looking at you. I think it's really cool when game designers actually, bring in and have that kind of oh, this is also a functional teaching tool. That's really interesting to me. I'm a college dropout.
No, I suppose that was our starting point, really. I suppose that's the difference. We came from it. That's going to be an educational tool and an RPG second, in some ways. So in fact, we're developing a whole teaching pack for Inspirisles at the moment, which will come out next year, for educators who aren't familiar with role-playing games. So it's just that instant kind of a gateway pack.
Yeah,
I think it's phenomenal. I think coziness, a big thing about why a lot of people are drawn to coziness is that they're games that you can play with your family. I can play it with kind of anyone in my family or extended family, and be pretty sure that you'll have a good time, which is not true of all of the games I really like, or even most of the games I really like. And I think that that lends itself well to also serving as an educational tool, right? Having a game where I am pretty sure that I can show this to a 5-year-old and a 70-year-old, and we can all kind of get similar things out of it, makes it a very valuable mechanism in that way.
Yeah, it supports multi-generational play, which is huge in learning.
Yeah, it doesn't limit your audience at all either, which I always find curious when people say, how do you make a living from doing family-friendly games? Well, it's the kids don't back the game. Crowdfunding,
right?
It's not 400 kids.
I would say my two biggest audiences are like queer gutter punks and dads.
That's so funny.
Finally, a game I can show my kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and I think Jay, you make a really important point because I mean, even coming from a mental health background, I think one of the first things they taught us when we were going through the course of therapeutic jam was psychologists do not make fun games.
Yes.
Teachers generally don't make fun games either. Yeah.
Right.
And so, because it's we're going to play this game with this point in mind, and then it becomes unfun.
Mm.
Well, not only is it unfun, but as someone who used to teach middle school, and I taught 6th through 8th grade all in one classroom, none of your two kids are alike. Every year, your classroom makeup is different. So somebody could make a game with the intention of it being played one specific way and having like set learning goals with it. And it doesn't mean it's going to work in my classroom. But if you build a game that has a framework that allows you to build off of it, you know, like you guys were saying, somebody with the skills can actually teach out of this. That is so much, you know, better. So you create a game that has sort of a mental health undercurrent or a social emotional learning undercurrent. You know, the educator can be like, hey, this fits with my class or this fits with my therapy group. We are going to play this, and now I'm going to tailor it to meet the needs of the group that I have. So it doesn't have to be explicit to be a really great tool. It just needs to be accessible and have sort of the bone structure there that allows somebody to build off of it.
Yeah, I mean, because the kids that are using the game in the US kind of took the structure of sign language learning and just put their own theme over top of it. You know, magical girls, like they forgot all the Arthurian mythology. Forget that. Put it that way. We're doing Barbie sessions now. You know, but we're learning sign language as we're playing, which is great because you want the system to be used in different ways.
I mean, speaking of that, do you watch streams of your games or anything? I don't mean play tests that you're controlling, but do you watch other people stream your games or run your games, and what have you learned from that
Absolutely process? If I know you're playing one of our games, like if you tag me, if you let me know and I'm able to be in your stream and watch it, I will absolutely 100% be there. I love watching people play because, you know, there are things that resonate with your player base that you maybe didn't think were going to resonate, or there's things that you set up and you're like, oh, this is going to be really cool, and then you watch and that's not how they're interacting with it, or they're not interacting with an NPC a certain way. Like, we have an NPC that we all love and everybody tries to pick fights with them, and it just consistently happens. So it's like, okay, that's interesting, we acknowledge it. But yeah, I think for me, I think it's important because that's, no matter what you intend with the game, how people are playing it and interacting with it is how it's sitting in the wild. And it's important to watch that and take note and see, you know, what is resonating with the public and what isn't. You can learn a lot.
I'm horrible at watching people play my games. I don't do it, and I don't like doing it. It's literally just like, once my game is out in the world, I don't want to, like, it's just like, it is done, it is out there, right? Like, the thing is out, and if you play it, you can do literally whatever you want with it, and I want to hear about it from you telling me about it, but watching it makes me feel like I become so self-conscious of the thing I've made. Like, all of the artifice just becomes so apparent, and like, every rule they choose to ignore, or every rule they follow, like, maybe harder than I would have followed, or like everything that they do differently than how I run it. I can't do it. I can't watch. Right. I can barely watch people play other people's games. Watching people play my own games, pulling teeth.
It's kind of like this difference between play testing and kind of actual plays of the games. I kind of see it like reading a book out loud. Like, I learn so much more if I hear it out loud as opposed to play tests behind closed doors.
Yeah, I gotta it's different to me when it's like I'm playtesting the game and I'm listening to a recording of other people playing it so that I can like edit and change the game. But when a game is done, it's done, right? Like, if I want to edit it, that's like next print run and it's a whole nightmare. So it's like I will learn nothing from this unless I don't know. Yeah, I think that it's really important for me to hear other people play my game, but I can't watch a stream. I'm sorry, streamers. I love your work. I'll retweet you as much as I can, but I can't watch it. I'm so bad at it.
This is actually an interesting question for Lost Guide Games, because I was recently running one of our games that Squidsy and I designed together for Neon Shadows. So Squidsy, what was it like watching me run the game for other people and you not being a part of it?
I hated it. I'm with Jay.
Yeah!
I am 100% on Jay's side. If I am, because we're in the middle of playtesting it still and releasing an actual play for it, and I will listen back and I'll be like, okay, that was a cool mechanic. We should do that. And, oh, that didn't quite make sense. Let's change the wording on that. But once I release it, I'm done. You tell me you're playing it, and I'm so excited, and I want to hear about it. I want to hear what your experience was like. I don't want to watch you play it.
See, I'm the opposite. I want to see you play the game. I want to see what you do with the thing that I've put in your hands. And if that means you break it into 1,000 little pieces, fantastic. Great. Good. Do that.
You know what it makes me feel like? If I never understood this when I was a kid, but I understand it now. My mom would like make dinner for everyone and then like not like really, I don't know, like she wouldn't really, she's like, she kind of like make food and then like kind of like not really like, I don't know, like she'd be like, oh, hey, in the kitchen, or like she like wouldn't really like want to hear compliments for our food, and I never understood that as a kid, because I was like, you make good food, of course you want to hear
My
that.
mother too. Like, how weird.
I don't want to watch you eat my food. I just like, I don't want to know if it was good or bad. I don't want to hear your thoughts on it. It's out. It's your food. You're eating it. It's done. Like that's
that's my same view on it, because once it's in their hands, it's their game, and I want to see how you play your game.
Yeah, see, and I'm one of those people that I will feed you the food, and then I will ask you questions
How
about
is
the
it?
food. Yeah, because then I know
how
that.
is the spice?
Yeah, my iteration for the next time I make the food. So yeah, I
We've
think
identified some personality types.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Too much oregano.
Do you watch the meat, or do you not watch the meat? Which type are you? Do you watch the meat? Or do you not watch the meat?
Do you watch the? Yeah. How do you sit with it? Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, like if I could make games where it was like I made this cool thing and then it just like enters the void, right? Like it, like my dad is an abstract painter, and he told me that one time that the whole point of what he was doing was the process of making it. And the painting is the artifact that demonstrates that he has made it, right? So the painting is the part of it that's the art for him, and the object is the remnant of the experience he had.
Right.
And to me, that kind of feels like my relationship, where it's like I love making games, I love learning about making games, I love having made a game even and seeing people's reactions to it. But there's just something about like there's something a little too I don't know. I just feel voyeuristic. I don't. I just feel it's too intimate. That's next question.
Okay.
Let's
Do you
move
play
on.
non-cozy TTRPGs?
Oh yes.
Play them?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Most of what I play is not cozy.
I attempt to play non-cozy TTRPGs. I have the curse of getting past session 0 or 1, but yeah.
Yeah, like oftentimes it's hard to get a campaign going, but like the main game I've been trying to play for the past couple of months is Lancer, like which is a mech game that's like very tactical combat. A lot of my favorite games are horror games. 10 Candles is my favorite RPG, and that is a horror one-shot. Apocalypse World is one of my favorite games to play. I've played a lot of it. So is Monster Hearts. Like many of my favorite games are not cozy, and I don't think it would be healthy for me if I made games that were super cutesy and then I only engaged with things that were super cutesy. I just think that that's a little... Hayao Miyazaki once said that the problem with anime is that the people making anime only watch anime and they only read manga. And I think that's true in a lot of mediums, where it's like there are video games made by people who only play video games, and you can tell. And I think it's healthy, like, which is not like me casting moral judgment. If someone else on the call is like, I only play cozy games, how dare you? Like, whatever. I just mean like I think it's very healthy for me to have a broad palette.
Yeah, and I think ultimately a lot of us have a broad palette, or because we were talking before we started about interest in the horror genre, and I think that's a kind of a juxtaposition that you see within the studio that I work at, is a lot of us really like horror. Not everybody, and even those of us that really like horror, we like different types of horror. But yeah, like our products are generally referred to as super cozy, but we definitely like scary stuff.
Got my start in horror. Like,
Yeah.
Wanderhome was like me diverging from my norm, which was like I was really interested in horror RPGs, and then I kind of like had a little bit of a switch in the pandemic, but people interpret it as like I'm just a cutesy girl. And I'm like, hey, I like cutesy games.
Sure.
There's 2 of them now, but there's a lot of other stuff in my backlog.
They feed different parts of your soul.
Yep.
Yes.
Also, I think that like a lot of the lessons in game design you got to learn from other places, right? Like a lot of the most important things functioning in Yazebas that kind of like make it tick come out of like many other games, right? Like we cite Dread on our list of influences. We cite Lady Blackbird, which is like we cite Blades in the Dark, I think, on our list of interests, right? Like it's a game that ultimately has very little in common with any of those games, but exposure to other games is like I think that, and also like truthfully, the reason I think part of why coziness and horror overlap is there's nothing scarier than being a kid who can't sleep at night, right? Like I think maybe I just was a really anxious 6-year-old, but I do think that I experience less fear in my day-to-day life than I did when I was a little kid, because as an adult, I have tools to self-soothe, and I'm familiar with the sensation. But when you are younger, every fear is the first time you've ever felt that fear, and my God, do you feel that fear?
Well, both genres. I don't know if cozy really is a genre,
It's
but
appropriate.
close, yeah,
I think
close
it
enough.
is like a very big umbrella genre. Are really very powerful emotional games, and that may be the connection that you like. You like feeling emotion in your game, not just rolling dice.
Right.
Well, they
So
both
I think
allow you to explore fear.
right.
That's true.
They allow you to approach fear through opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
Yeah.
One is you are approaching fear through a place of security, cozy, and then you are approaching fear through a place of danger and insecurity, horror, and kind of that middle ground where they meet, where you're actually interacting with the fear, with the dark, spooky thing in the closet. The good thing about the cozy games is most of the time that big spooky thing in the closet, once you open the door, isn't actually a big spooky thing. In horror, you open the closet and your head gets bitten off.
There's a thing I think about a lot in an episode of Moomin Valley, where there's a character who's been separated from everyone else, and they're standing at the entranceway of a cave. And the camera is shot, so there's the stalactites and stalagmites of the cave, look almost like a mouth, looking at this figure who is standing very small against the beach. And that character is like calling out everyone's name and like looking for them, and is like visibly scared. And there's this moment where it's in a different genre, that character would die, right? Like in a different genre, this would be the prelude to a very bad thing. And then because it's Moomin and it's a kid show, the other characters find him and it's fine and it resolves. But there's this moment of tension and like a little feeling like as an older person, right, where it's like, is this kid gonna get hurt? Like, is this kid about to get murked? That it's oh my God, I'm worried. And like I think that coziness kind of has that similar sense where it's like things can be, I don't know, like you can be reassured knowing there's no violence in Wanderhome, but it does mean that when you get close to the points where there would be violence, there's a little bit of this sensation of like, where are we going with this, right? Like it kind of elicits different, it creates a different emotional range.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have hit the midpoint of the show. Why don't we take a few minutes for a bio break? Stay tuned while I run the slideshow of the cool Kickstarters that are running or up and coming, and we will see you in a few minutes, everybody.
Cool.
Hello, everybody. We're back. And I'm going to start with some individual questions. And if anybody wants to hop on, they think of something that they found interesting about it. But, you know, all of you create very interesting and unique products. And I thought I'm going to ask some questions specifically about a few of your products or your company or whatever. So the first one I'm going to do, let me go. You know, I'm going to do Snowbright first. So with Cozy Companion, has this led to growth in the industry as a whole, as your growth, as opposed to only your game product? Like, has Cozy Companion helped other companies grow that you know of?
Yeah, I mean, eventually I hope so. We are in production for Volume 4 right now, so Cozy Companion is still really new. But part of our intention behind creating Cozy Companion was to be able to lift up other voices within kind of the cozy game community. So, you know, we do bring on other game developers for interviews. You know, we're talking to different game adjacent shops like Night Moves in Boston and Crafty Gamer. So we do game reviews of other people's products. So there's definitely a strong vibe. Like if you read it, we are talking about other people's work and we're bringing those people in to talk about their work. So, you know, I think our hope is that in a year or two, when Cozy Companion has, you know, been through at least a full year's worth of subscriptions and we've, you know, branched out and more people have found us, that, you know, being in the magazine will help other people get found by the community in a much more meaningful way. I know developers are excited to get featured even now, but we're new. Like it's a brand new product for us. So I don't think it's having the impact yet that we would like it to have, but you know, our vision is that it will be a place where cozy gamers, you know, cozy developers can bring their product and talk about what they do and allow the community of players to have a place to go to see not only what Snowbright does, but what everybody else does too, and help them find other studios, other developers, other products.
All right, then I have two questions for each of you. The next one is about Ink. So Ink has a very different feel from any other cozy TTRPG I've seen. It's very dark. It explores death, the afterlife, shadow, spooky things. Is it a cozy game?
It is. It is and it isn't. So I think a lot of that depends on your party and your GM. It is definitely a Snowbright title. It is definitely a take on like cozy horror. We call it sort of our roguelite esque game. Yeah, there's combat in it, but there is still a coziness at its core. If you choose to play it that way. Like we have our baristas in the elixir shops are very cozy locations. So if you are a cozy gamer and you wanted to play it, there's still going to be combat, but it could still have, you know, as Jay was saying earlier, there's like a collection of different things that can make up cozy. It's still going to tick a lot of those boxes. It's not going to tick all of those boxes, but it can still tick quite a few. But then if you hand it to a GM and a party that just want to go and massacre fiends, then no. You know, it's a game that has a lot of potential for being, you know, sort of cozy combat, cozy horror, or it could be really dark if you wanted to take it to a really dark place. So we haven't seen too many live plays of it yet, but some of the ones that I've seen have been cozy. You know, there's still that emotional exploration happening in some really cool ways, which ties back to that. Yeah, there's combat, but there's also exploring emotion and processing all of that in, you know, sort of a safe supported way, which the game is, you know, it's designed for you to be able to explore that should you choose to.
Yeah, nice. It was such an interesting experience, like trying to understand it versus all the other games. I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
excited to see more people get into it because it's, obviously we have a darker undertone that we do like to explore. So ink is our way of not leaving our core values, but still sort of playing with some of that more spooky vibe.
All right, let's go to Lost Guide games. So you have the most games of the group, and most are more niche. Is there a bigger system or setting that you have in the back burner that you're like working towards, or do you really love the small, very niche types of products?
I'm going to let Squidsy take a crack at this one first.
Yeah. So, um, that's such a interesting question and not one I've thought about. I really like the smaller niche games. I like to explore different SRDs. I like to see what they can do. I talked about one of my favorites, Guided by the Sun, which I wrote 2 games on, that tell the same story from different sides. Um, I really like the small, little silly niche games. It's hard being a magical girl, especially when you're in school. But then we do have these bigger projects in the background, Neon Shadows being our first one, um, where we approached the belonging outside belonging system with mixed with a card system that Grimm came up with that goes along with it. So it's a little bit column A, a little bit of column B.
Well, my second question is about your dice system. Do you have plans to expand that into more and bigger places? Like more games? Is it going to become the backbone of a lot of games? Or is it really kind of limited to what it's in now?
So I'm pretty sure Squidsy wants me to be able to talk about the dice system. Yeah, I can see the nodding head from here. The dice system, I have full plans on making an SRD and putting an SRD out. I'm very curious what other people would do with the system. There are thoughts in the back of my head about using it for other games through Lost Guide games. The big thing for me with it was trying to design a narrative-driven system that really focuses on inter-character interaction and development of the character following play. My plan currently is to polish the SRD and maybe next year, the year after that, trying to run a game jam at some point with it, just because I'm really curious what other people would do with the dice system. But for Lost Guide games, I have a couple ideas knocking around. I'm curious if any of our other members and if any of other designers have ideas for it. There will probably be something else coming out on the system at some point.
Cool. All right. Let's go to Jay. All right. So with Wanderhome, I sometimes want to teach RPG not constrained by system and more built for unleashing setting. And I think there's a lot of games now that are doing that. D&D is the opposite. It's a lot of system, there's setting, but really the system is the core of it. Did you come to Wanderhome or create Wanderhome with that in mind, like the idea of eliminating system for the most part and making setting be the big element?
So I talk about this in an article of mine called Systems of Relation, which is about the function of non-mechanical systems in game, where the thing about Wanderhome is not that it lacks system, but that the systems present are broadly non-mechanical, which is Wanderhome is an exploration of the ways in which game mechanics, like, you can do a lot mechanically without having to involve like game mechanics, right? But a lot can happen systematically. And so frequently a comparison point for me is like the children's game of House, which is a game that a group of kids are playing utilizing the nuclear family as the system that they're kind of playing through. And the rules of the game are dictated by the rules of the family, right? Those are inseparable there. It is literally the system of the family being applied into a group of kids. And Wanderhome is kind of me presenting this very broad system, which is, I think, a setting, right? Like, it is, like, you're not wrong in your use of setting. It's just that I think that what Wanderhome is functioning with is almost, I think, more in terms of Vampire the Masquerade. I think it's maybe a good comparison, of a game where people are not playing Vampire the Masquerade because they really love, broadly, there are exceptions, broadly because they really love the White Wolf mechanics. They're playing Vampire Masquerade because the nature of vampires speaks to them in this kind of intense way, that they want to embody these characters in their relationships. And that to me is kind of what systems of relationship systems and like non-mechanical systems is kind of, that's kind of what the focus is.
Awesome. So my next question though is about your company. So you're, from what I could find of the group here, you're the only one with an explicit page for retail stores. Do you feel like there is a lack of cozy games reaching mass market through retail, or do you happen to love the retail experience? Like, you have a favorite store that has made you decide to support it? Because a lot of creators now are all about direct sales.
God, do you want me to take off my game designer hat and put on my business hat?
For
I'll put on my
moment?
business
Sure.
hat.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. I mean, the reason I do it is not because I value local game stores. It's just because it makes us more money. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's like, there's no particular moral motivation there. It's just that B2B, like, when you're at a certain like size in your operation as a company, you really should be prioritizing B2B and wholesale a lot more than most game designers do. That's not like, that's just like, like I've talked to companies where it's like they make $1 million in direct sales and $1 million in wholesales, right? Like, that's just so like, it's nothing to do with cozy games. It's nothing to do with my politics or my like moral philosophy. It is entirely just that. And also, I mean, I guess to a degree, like, I support local game stores, and I think that I want to be showing local game stores that we are like directly on their side and having them on our website and all that. But no, it's not about that at all. It's pragmatic. I'm a business girl as much as I'm a game designer.
I love that.
We
answer.
do. Yeah, we do retail too, and Jay's right. Like, at a certain point, you have to acknowledge that that's part of the industry.
Yeah.
And like, it's like I'm like, there are a lot of good designers. I'm not running Possum Creek Games because I'm a good designer. If I'm I believe I am a decent designer at least, but that doesn't mean I should be running a company. It means I should be designing games.
Yeah.
I'm running a company because I'm also pretty good at that. And so like, there are many times you have to make pragmatic choices, and ideally those pragmatic choices align with your moral philosophy, or at least don't go against it, right? Like, ideally I'm not making any choices that leave me feeling morally conflicted. But like, sometimes it's just the how the sausage is made.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Rich. So, what is the greatest power of journaling in a game like Dragon Dowser? Journaling games it's almost a different genre in and of itself. So what do you see as the power of journaling games? What does it do for players?
Well, my background's in creative writing. My education's in creative writing, and I came to game design very late in terms of a career, and I discovered the journaling genre or journaling space of game design very late, and I was blown away by what they could achieve basically, and I latched onto it straight away, and I thought, how would this work with the teen group? I run a group for teenagers. I thought, how would it look if I put that SRD to the players, and they can reskin any sort of theme or over the mechanics of journaling. I use the Carter system by Peach Garden Games, and it's wonderful. It's so intuitive and uses a spread of cards, and I think there's so much can come from just quite open-ended prompts in terms of creating a whole journal and a journey through that it really impacts your creative writing learning and your writing ability, really.
Nice. For Inspirisles, I think does something that honestly I don't think I've seen another game do, which is helping people with sign language, to learn sign language. Do you get messages from people talking about how it's helping them heal in ways, as opposed to just telling you about the entertainment or educational value of it?
Not so much.
No.
Not really in terms of healing. I think the game also promotes empathy in the players and obviously teamwork and collaborative storytelling. So, and I think that every role-playing game has the ability to kind of have a healing effect, really. Just in terms of listing its benefits, in terms of RPGs, I think they can go on forever. You can speak for a whole different stream on the benefits of role-playing games. But it's mainly educational benefits, and obviously learning a language, and obviously that communication. I mean, the people in the US that are using it in the school, they never met a deaf person or someone with even hard of hearing throughout the whole education. So it was kind of like a real eye opener for them.
I have to say, when I first saw, I think it was when you guys were getting ready for the Kickstarter campaign, I'm hard of hearing. So for me, it was really exciting to see the game kind of come to fruition, because it's, something that impacts me to a certain degree. So seeing, you guys creating this product that was relevant, we always say like representation matters. So seeing a game company care about something that is often totally overlooked was really exciting. It was really exciting to see.
Thanks, that's appreciated. I mean, in terms of people using in family dynamics, with hearing loss within families, that happens a lot. So in terms of healing that way, then yes, I guess so.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking, was like families and friends and stuff that, kind of overcoming those kinds of things that are happening.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's just been a great journey. It's been really fun.
All right. Well, I mean, that was all the individual questions. I'm going to get back to just sort of the bigger, more generic questions. So, who have been some of your inspirations in the TTRP industry? Like, who's inspired you to go and create and become a better creator, or even start a company, whatever it happens to be?
I owe a great debt to the Bakers, both creatively and emotionally, and also Avery Alder, who was really been like very critical in my like figuring out what the hell I'm doing. I remember like having a conversation with her very early on, like when Wanderhome went big, where I was like, what do I do? And she was really helpful. I think like, and then I have a lot of friends in this space, of course, but like when I think of like the people who were like my North Star when it came to making all of this make sense, is something that like I think is clear, and I think it was the Bakers and Avery was really it for me.
Nice. Anyone else been inspired by anybody in the industry?
Me. Go.
You first. You started first. Go.
I'm gonna say, I think for me it's kind of a weird way, because I transitioned from education through like esports and then into TTRPG.
Oh, wow.
But I was using TTRPG in my classroom before I made the jump. So I started into the TTRPG community before I became part of Snowbright, but I entered in through kind of the educator way. So I think it's Power Outage. I made connections with different handmade dice makers like Greenleaf Geek and Ice Cream Dice, and Dots RPG, or Dots Dots TTRPG with the Braille dice. So I came in through sort of an accessibility and maker way, and it just it allowed me to enter into sort of a more I want to say I came through like a queer disabled backdoor into the TTRPG space, which I think was really nice, because I didn't get some of the other aspects of the tabletop community until I was already kind of in and had a really nice group of people around me. So yeah, those people were all really huge for me when I first started, before I even got into working like really in the space professionally.
So I am going to embarrass myself a little bit. Jay, you were actually a huge inspiration for me shifting this from a hobby to a more professional thing. Wanderhome really was such a pivotal game for me, and being able to see, because part of my issue is I've been in the hobby for a very, very long time. I've been in the hobby one way or another since I was around 7 years old. My father GM'd his friends. One of my first key memories is walking down in the basement and seeing him and his friends with cigars and whiskey, minis on the table, rolling dice. That is a key formative memory for me. So for me, and I had known other indie games before Wanderhome, but I've never really dug into one and kind of realized games could be this until I had Wanderhome sitting in front of me. So, Jay, me being here is entirely your fault.
I've had so much support from Matt Hamilton at Roebuck and Deckard in the UK. They've really helped me, especially in terms of the business and expanding, like mentorship, really. And they've done it.
This house.
Yeah, they've done it. Like consistently all the way through, really, since we started releasing games. Because I went in completely like unaccustomed to any of the systems, especially in terms of publishing and fulfillment. So it was very important to have someone there to support me.
So what's been go on, sorry.
Sorry. So yes, to echo Grimm, Wanderhome is kind of a reason we design and develop games and thought of like, oh yeah, we could try this. But really, a game I played when I was in the therapeutic GM training was Fall of Magic by Deercorn. Changed the way I looked at games. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just echoing you. Great game. Keep going.
It's phenomenal. Changed my whole life and how I look at games. I have not been in the tabletop space very long. I actually came in from a forum-based roleplay background. Yes.
Okay, that's where we met, actually. That's where Squidsy and I met and started to become friends, and those servers have burned.
So that's, the storytelling background and how I build my games comes from that forum-based roleplay. And then as soon as I entered the scene, RP from Fari RPGs, fantastic individual. Craig from Craig Hatler Games has been phenomenal. I met some wonderful people. Andy from Pandion. And then I've gathered a bunch of little podcasters. I love my podcasters so much. There's no better hype than podcasters. So big shout out, and they know who I'm talking about. Big shout out to you guys. But yeah, so definitely Fall of Magic, and then the background, and who I met coming into this hobby.
Thank you for rating Gamer Mom Luna, one of my favorite people in the space. Great show over there that they have, so happy to have them joining us. If you have questions, drop them in chat. Just put question before it. So the next one that I have, okay, so this one will be funny. Maybe it will be funny. I don't know. Do you play each other's games?
Hi, Jay.
I am.
It's kind of crazy. It's one of those it's a lyric game. No one can play Wanderhome. It's unplayable.
I play it with my cat. I went to Gen Con last year, and there was a studio selling had a TTRPG with your cat, and I was like, I've got a psychotic kitten. This will be great. What do I play with her? And yeah, Wanderhome has been the game that I've been playing with a cat. So, yep, me and Ryla.
Fantastic.
I don't really have time to play games, but at the moment at least. But I read everything. I've read everyone's games. Basically, I back all games. I read all games. I get quite a lot of pleasure from reading, especially before bedtime.
I mean, you also come from a creative writing background.
Yeah, exactly.
Educational, so it's reading the papers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love games to read.
Yeah, I got my start in LARP, and the particular way in which I got my start in LARP meant that playtesting was not a thing that I got to do, which gave me the ability to look at a text and figure out what the game will be like. I look like a. Sorry, this pillow is really helping my neck, but also makes me look like a 17th century debunked. But it means that I'm much better at reading games than I am, like in terms of just like understanding what's going on, and then like playing them is like a nice thing I get to do if I get the chance to. But I don't think I've played anyone else's games here, but that's mostly just because time sucks.
Yeah,
I
time
believe-
is-
I believe I've read. At the very least I've read Carrie. I've read your work. I don't know.
Yep.
I've read yours, but I have not yet had the chance to read anything by Squidsy and Grimm, although now I want to. So
Mhm.
Ink is definitely on the list to play. Now that I've
Ink
heard you
is on
talk
our
about
list.
it,
Yeah,
Ink
no,
is on
Ink-
the list.
I've been meaning to talk to you.
Yeah.
I've been actually meaning to talk to Squidsy about Ink for a while for our next Sunday TTRPG brunch that we do.
Yeah,
Ink's
let
been
me
on
know if
my
you guys
list.
let me know if you guys play it. I've gotten to. I mean, it's what's even like getting to play
wanna
your
play
own
in it?
game. I think
You
because
want to
like
play in it?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
would love to, because like I've never played Teatime. I've read it. I am like the lore keeper, but I've never played it. I have played Ink,
Dope.
and that was
We'll play
actually
tea time then. We'll play tea time.
oh, we'll play anything. I seriously am cursed. So if anybody wants a game, hit me up because I
The
can
way
never.
that Grubby and I celebrate any particular one of our games coming out is that she plays it for the first and only time.
Okay.
We did it with
Oh,
Yazeba's. It's her one RPG of the year. She plays. She actually
You're-
plays one of our games.
I like that though. Like I wish we all had more time to play not only everybody else's games but our own too. Like it's
besides playtesting.
yeah. Because playtesting's different. It's a completely
It's
different
not
animal.
quite
It's
right.
it's not like it's a I mean, I enjoy playtesting, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I like breaking things, but
Playing to break it is not the same thing as playing
no,
to
it's
enjoy
not.
it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Mhm.
We are getting another raid, so that's really cool. You're getting another few people added in. Awesome. So I love getting raids. I think it's one of the best things that Twitch ever created was the raid system. So what's the biggest challenge you've come across either in creating your game like mechanically or finding a market for your game, kind of understanding, demographically where you can go with your game?
Obviously I don't do all of our marketing. Grace is kind of the other half of marketing. But I do a lot of our communication. So it's a lot of our social media outreach. I think for like with Tea Time Adventures, we knew our market pretty quickly, and we've actually seen that that's kind of the case. What we estimated as our market bracket ended up being our market bracket. Reaching them isn't always easy. So if you're like a brand new studio, which we were, it's hard to get the reach. So it's who you need to find, but being able to get your product in front of them takes time. And just with like the whole social media and marketing world being kind of this in the state of flux and algorithms constantly sort of changing, it makes it hard. You can luck out and have somebody, if the right person picks up your content, you can go viral in a day and your product can, like, you don't have to worry about it. Like the marketing happens just from user generated content. But that's not what happens to most of us. So it's being okay with things taking time, and knowing that it'll find its market. Like for me, conventions are great for that because you get to sit and actually talk to people, and people who've played it can come back and you're like, okay, yeah, no, we were right with who we were marketing this to. It just takes time to find it. And then with Ink, we knew who we were marketing to there too, because they were always the people that would stop by and be like, yeah, no, this cozy tea thing, not my jam. Do you have anything where I can hit something with a stick? We're like, actually, now we do. But yeah, marketing's weird.
One of my big things is that I view my marketing brain as one of the many editors who works on the project. but very critically is not one of the writers working on the project. So I never am thinking about audience when I'm making things. I just make things.
Awesome.
And then once the thing is done, I then sit down. I'm like, okay, how do I sell this? Right? What does that actually mean? And sometimes the answer is, I cannot sell this. This is not sellable. Oh well, I made a cool thing and I get to make more cool things. But I really try. I think one of the biggest things has been keeping the business hat and the game designer hat as like two separate parts of my creative process, so that way I can make things that I believe in artistically and then figure out how to sell them rather than being stressed about how to make things that I can sell. Because if there's one thing I've seen is that tabletop RPGs are too small to be designing while worrying about how best to, like, if you're sitting there being like, oh, everyone's making furry games, I gotta make my anthropomorphic animals game. No, you don't. No, you don't. It doesn't. It's too small, right? Like, the reason why there's a lot of anthropomorphic animal games right now could just be because of, like, coincidence, right? Like, it's a 50-year-old industry, and there's, like, not that many people making stuff for it. So, like, I think people overthink the presence of marketing, but also I think, like, you got to think about it. Carrie, I'm with you. Like, that's also, I will use that language when talking about marketing. I just think that in the writing room, I think one of the biggest challenges for me has been keeping marketing out of the writing room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I agree. I think it needs to be out of the writing room.
Yeah.
I think there's times where I'll pop in when we're having creative discussions because I'm the one that's behind all the social media. So I'll be like, okay, but if we're going to do that, like, can I sell that? But by and large, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like, you take the product that you create and then figure out how, what are the pieces about it that are marketable and who are they marketable to? And otherwise, I think you're building the product backwards.
Right. For Lost Guide games, our design philosophy has never been to chase a trend. Like, that's one of our core tenets is we're not in... And, okay, I want to say this. Lost Guide games, it's not that we're not in it to make money. We want to make income, of course. The reason why we create a game, though, is not to make money. We create a game because we want to create an experience. We then will find a way to market and sell the experience after the fact. But the designing of the game is not done to chase trends. It's not done to chase a dollar. We're building and designing games because we want to make fun games to play. We'll figure out the marketing afterwards on it.
Yeah.
Even if it's hey, we can't market, like Joe was saying, we can't market this game, but we're still going to have it. We're still toss it up on our edge page. If someone finds something like and they buy it, great. It's fantastic. But there's always another game to make.
And even if games follow, like, certain trends, like going back to the anthropomorphic games, like, because we've had people directly compare us to Wanderhome. Oh, is this like Wanderhome? And it's like, no, not even remotely like Wanderhome. Like, these are, yes, they both have animals, but these are two completely different games. And you might like both of them, but they are quintessentially different at their core, and they're completely different gaming experiences. And that's the beauty of gaming, is that, there's something out there for everybody. So it's finding what makes your game unique and special to get that word out there.
I'll be the one to drop the aesthetic bomb for the first time this episode, because I don't think we've actually used the word yet. Anthro is an aesthetic, it's not a genre.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. People are like, oh, is this one like Wanderhome because there are anthropomorphic animals on it? Probably not. Actually, the belonging outside belonging system is a fantastic system that I don't think enough people use, personally. But just because there's a cozy demeanor and bear and tweed on the cover doesn't mean it's gonna be like Wanderhome.
I got the same questions about Wanderhome, like being like, "Oh, is this just Golden Sky Stories?" Or Warhammer changes. One thing that I think is relevant here. Last week, Grubby and I spent a weekend really nailing down the philosophy of Possum Creek and like our 10-year plan and all that stuff. And one of the things we really identified is that we are a company that's about getting cool, weird artists to make beautiful, smart art and having a sustainable space to do that. And the big things about that as like a philosophy is, first off, like sustainable is like big red and underlined, right? Like sustainable ends up driving a lot of our day-to-day, that word. And then also tabletop RPGs is not actually in our company philosophy. That when we think about why we're doing this, it's like at the end of the day, we're making art, and we have found that tabletop RPGs is the art that we are making. But there's a sense with us that that's arbitrary, right? That we kind of could be making anything as long as it's art that we believe in and we are proud of. And I do think that, like, that's important, right? Like, I don't think that has to be true, right? I think that the tabletop RPGs are like a unique market space, but I do think that, like, I do think it's healthy to have a sense of like, we could kind of be making any art, right? Like, we're as long as we're making art, right? Like, you know, that's the big thing, is whatever it ends up looking like, whatever the details are, whatever the you know, like, or who are we marketing this to? What does it look like? What is this nature? That's secondary to me after the core thing. And like, I think, as you said, Grimm, it's like we like making money, right? We're sustainable drives a lot of our day-to-day activities,
Right.
but that's not that's not why we're doing it. It's
Right.
the result of our philosophy of needing to make the stuff we do sustainable.
If you are
profitable,
right, if you are making games chasing trends, you will always be 3 trends behind. If you, with the development time that goes into a game to make it worth playing, if you are making a game just to trace a trend, that trend will be 2 or 3 gone by the time your game is ready to hit the product, and you'll be so far behind. It's, don't make a game for a trend. Make the game you want to play.
And I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I think it's important too, because if you're making it's okay. I'll use me as an example. I'm not a sci-fi person. It's just not my jam. But if I try to make a sci-fi game, to chase a trend, it's gonna come through that, one, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have zero clue. And 2, I didn't enjoy it.
It's gonna be disingenuous. Right. It's gonna be disingenuous.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't like it. I actually just stood on my soapbox about this exact topic in a Discord, about do what you love, not because social pressure says you should.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I have every once in a while run into a game that has a sense of like, you saw that Wanderhome was well Kickstarter, didn't you?
Yeah.
And those games, the biggest takeaway is like, there's a deep sense for like there's a deep sense of like disingenuousness, which is like a really, I think, I don't know, I don't mean that in like a critical way. Like, people can make whatever they want, and I'm gonna be a nasty little rat goblin, but I've never, I think it's very rare I've had this reaction. I've never, like, I don't know, it's not a thing I've had in front of anyone or anything, but it's just like my little thing. But it is, you can kind of tell when a game is like, okay, this is made by someone who just needs to make a thing because they think this will be their big break. And that's not how you make things that are worth making, right? Is that if you're making a thing because you're like, oh my god, this has got to be, you know, like, I gotta get a taste of that. It's like, no, you, like, it already is, like I never want to make the next Dungeons and Dragons. I never want a game that's like Dungeons and Dragons. I don't want to make the J Dragon. You know, I don't want to make the D&D killer, because D&D already exists and it's pretty popular. I think. I think it seems like a lot of people really like D&D from what I've put together, give or take. And I don't want to. I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not challenging that. I'm not like. That's not my business model. My business model, I'm like the things that I think are cool, even if I don't know if anyone else likes them, and just make them, and then find an audience afterwards. But yeah.
Well, it's creating more space for a wider, more diverse group of people. And the more little studios and creators there are out there making the games that they are passionate about, that means something to them, it just means the more people that we're able to pull into a hobby that can oftentimes be, can exclude different individuals. So
no, you really don't know. You really don't know what concept or idea is going to really connect with people as well.
Yeah,
right.
You can't predict that. Something could be very, very personal to someone, even though it's your experience.
One thing that I've loved, and this is a very small side tangent real quick, going off of something Carrie just said, One thing that I have loved watching with this hobby as it's developed, just because I've been in the hobby all my life, is seeing the growth and inclusion of different voices and the better parts and the better communities within this hobby taking and lifting those voices up and letting them actually be heard. That is such. For the longest time, I hated that whenever I wanted to play a tabletop game, it would be me and 4 or 5 other people who looked just like me. And I hated it. Because there's no growth, there's no development, there's no chance to learn, there's no chance to enrich yourself, no chance to interact. Tabletop gaming, in my mind, is the pinnacle of modern storytelling. GMless, with or without a GM, with or without mechanics, just the ability to get people around the table and telling a story together. It is such a powerful thing.
All right, I think there's time for one more question, and this one, it's really 2 pieces. So, a hard lesson learned and a soft lesson learned from becoming a TTRPG creator.
Yeah, that's just an easy one to end it with. Great, thank you.
There's a piece of advice Avery Alder gave me. But I mentioned earlier that I was panicking about what the heck am I doing with Wanderhome? Avery came to me and we talked, and she gave me this piece of advice that was, figure out what you actually want to be doing, and do that. Because it's really easy in RPGs, especially when you're like an entrepreneur and you're starting your little one-person house, to feel that the one like you gotta do everything, and then you quickly are in a spot where you're doing everything except for the thing that you wanted to be doing when you got here, right? Like you came here to make games, and now you are purely hypothetically maybe like managing a bunch of distribution and customer relations and marketing and like project timelines, and suddenly you've forgotten why you're making games.
Yeah.
That's not personal at all.
Yeah, I mean, no one's ever done that before. And so identify what you actually want to be doing and do that. And like, it doesn't have to be a job. It's a job for me because I spent a lot of time thinking about it and decided like, yes, I do want to do this as my job, which is a different relationship to have, but with something that's your hobby, right? When something is your job, it's not always going to be fun. It's going to actually suck a lot of the time, right? That's kind of what a job is, right? You half the time, you're kind of sick of it, right? Like, this is in many ways my dream job, but it would be a lot more of my dream job if it wasn't a job. So like, don't treat RPGs like you gotta do the parts you want to be doing, and if you want it to be a job, make it your job. But you don't have to make it your job to make cool things and post them and show your friends. You can just do that for fun. You don't have to.
Most people do.
Yeah.
Right, most people do.
Hey, if you do really like taking a thing you love and then slowly sucking the joy out of it, so that do that too, right? Who am I to stop you? I
You
did
could be a
it.
TTRPG vampire.
Right.
I think for me, like a hard lesson is accept when things are outside of your control. And I think that applies to like with all of the people in the Snowbright team. Like we all have different jobs. We all bring different things to the table. We all come together and work collaboratively on all of our projects. So we're all very like in the pot. But regardless of where you are in that creative process or what role you play, there's always going to be situations that are outside of your control, whether it's, timeline or project management, or like on my end, huge social media shakeups. That means, a plan that you've drafted 2 months ago now is completely out the window and you're having to completely restructure, your marketing. Realize that those things happen. And you need to be able to sort of step back and give up control in those situations and not try and fight for something that you don't have. I think it makes it a lot less stressful and a lot easier to manage, because there's a lot of what we do. It's like trying to ship a game during COVID when there were paper shortages and shipping issues, and you're trying to fulfill crowdfunding, and it's like, yeah, there's boats aren't moving, we can't get paper, all the things that we planned, our timelines are now, in flux, and just watching everybody across the board, going through really stressful times, and it all being outside of our control. So I think that's my like the hard lesson, like the lesson that hurt, because I want to be in control. I'm definitely one of those people that likes to, dot my I's, cross my T's. So, yeah, I think that's always the challenging one for me, is to be able to step back and go, yeah, I can't do anything about this, so here's what I'm going to do instead.
I mean, I definitely share that. I mean, it's taken me about 2.5 years to actually develop that, letting go of things out of my control, especially with printing and distribution and fulfillment. Because once it's sent off to them, it's like it's out of my hands completely.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop it being stressful. But now I've stepped back and gone, like, it'll be ready when it's ready.
Yeah. I think my soft lesson is find the things that feed you in your occupation. So for me, it's watching live plays of our product, going to conventions and getting to actually talk to our fan base. Like, what are the things that are going to feed that passion and remind you of what you do and why you do it? That way, throughout the year, like, you can make conscious decisions to be in certain places to sort of do the things that help invigorate you and keep you connected in a positive way to what you do for a living.
My hard would be not neglecting downtime. Visiting friends. Like I went for a period of just basically isolating myself because of the business, especially as a startup, and neglecting that, and it led to some troubling days. So not neglecting it, and a soft one would be rewarding yourself, like routinely, just for milestones and things. I think that's quite important. Just even if it's just like an RPG that you back on Kickstarter or something. It's nice to have little rewards along the journey.
Yeah, very nice.
I do have to say, definitely the hard lesson is control. Kind of to echo Carrie, that's rough. Whether it be releasing a game on our itch.io page or whatever we're doing at the time, it's out of my hands now. Aside from like marketing and things like that, but it's for the most part out of my hands.
And some of that's out of your hands too.
Every time we do a release and Squidsy pushes the button to push it up on itch or push it wherever, I get a ding on my phone. Grimm, I'm gonna shut it down. I'm shutting it all down. We're stopping. We're never gonna make another game. We're never doing this again. And it's Squidsy, take a breath and push the button. Take a breath, push the button.
And then a soft lesson, to echo kind of something that's been said multiple times through this stream, is the little things. Remind yourself why you like doing what you're doing. Go, whether it be play a game, read a game, learn a new SRD, or just reward yourself a little bit, give yourself a little bit of a treat. But remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing and why you love doing what you're doing.
I think my hard lesson is make sure you find your tribe. Make sure you find people that actually support you, actually want to do this with you, actually are wanting to put in the effort that you're, even if it's not matching the effort for effort, they're putting in what they feel like they can with you. Their drive for it harmonizes with yours. Working with people who don't resonate can throw everything off and make everything worse very easily. And it can expedite all of the other problems. It can draw more of the joy out of it quicker. It can make, everything else harder. So make sure that you're working with, if you're working with other people, and this also includes yourself. Actually, make sure that when you're working with yourself on this, you're being kind to yourself also, and that's kind of the soft lesson, is feeding back into do what it takes to be kind to yourself through this process. If you're starting to design games, that first draft is rough of the first game you make. That first draft is rough of the first game you make, and you're going to want to toss it away. Don't do it. Find someone you trust and someone who you like, and someone whose opinion you can trust, and give it to them. Say, here, you take a look at it. If they're your actual friend, they'll be honest with you and tell you whether or not it's garbage.
Yeah. All right. If no one has anything else to add to that, I think we've hit the end of the night, and I want to thank all of you for joining me. I think this has been an exciting show tonight. Everybody's very talkative and really had a lot to say that was valuable, I think. I'm sure the audience got a lot out of it. The YouTube audience and the podcast audience will get more. We'll get that also. We will see all of you in about a week. Let's run backward. We'll go in reverse order from where we did earlier, and let everybody say where they are, their name, and all the information they want to give you. So let's start with you, Grimm.
That'll be me. Hello, yet again, my name is Grimm. You can find me at TBS_Grimm on Twitter. And yeah, that's basically it.
All right, Squidsy.
So I'll just cover the rest of it.
Yeah.
So again, I am the partnering director, I get it backwards all the time, of Lost Guide Games. I run the social media pages, so at Lost Guide Games, that includes Bluesky, Mastodon, which I'm not actually on as often as I should be, but definitely Twitter, at Corrosive Squid with Twitter. And if you're brave enough, you can find my Tumblr at Corrosive Squid, but I'm gonna warn you, I've had it for years.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
You can find our games at itch.io, Lost Guide Games, or Lost Guide. I think it's lostguide.itch.io. But yeah, that's us.
All right, Rich.
Oh yeah, I'm at Hatchling DM, most social media. You can find all about our games at www.hatchlingsgames.co.uk. And we've got a Kickstarter coming out on Tuesday. So a couple of days from now.
So
Cryptid
excited.
Creeks.
So excited.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited about the launch.
Congrats. All right, Jay.
Hi, my name is Jay. I am the editorial director at Possum Creek Games. I co-run the place, and you can check us out at possumcreekgames.com. You can support our Patreon at patreon.com/Possum Creek, where I just posted a new RPG the first time I finished in my year, which was very triumphant for little old me. Yeah, you can check out our games. Wanderhome is one that a lot of people here really like. Sleepaway is one that I like a lot. The upcoming Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, I think it's a real banger. So go check our stuff out.
I think it's funny to hear someone refer to a cozy game as a banger. That is awesome.
It tracks. It tracks. Just saying. For Wanderhome, it tracks. It is a banger.
It's a banger. It slaps.
It slaps.
All right, Carrie.
I'm Carrie from Snowbright Studio. I'm the communications manager there. We have a backer kit crowdfunding campaign starting on the 12th for Teatime Adventures Teapats. You can find us on Threads, TikTok, Bluesky, Instagram, Facebook at Snowbright Studio. We are not very active on Twitter anymore, so I wouldn't go there to find us. And then if you're looking just for me, I'm Chalk Muju on pretty much all social media platforms.
All right, and I'm Scott. You can find me everywhere at @ZealZaddy and I did just drop a casting call for a Old Gods of Appalachia game that I'm going to be running in October. So if you're interested in playing in a a pretty immersive game, cosplayed, music, the whole thing, go and fill out the form. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. We are talking world building next week with, I think, Kim of Gooey Cube is going to be one of the guests who I'm very excited about. They put out a lot of cool product. We will see you in a week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.